Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Story here on Keystroke Medium. I'm Josh Hayes here with Scott Moon, and today we are talking with Paul Corcoran, one of the 14 authors who contributed to the Exploration Through the Wormhole anthology by Woodbridge Press. The Exploration series is a collection of themed short stories set in a shared universe where the authors were given a set of rules and technology and then set loose on the world to destroy or create as they saw fit. Paul Corcoran is known for the Saif series, and he contributed Through Glassy Eyes. And today we're going to talk to him about what inspired the story and what it was like to write in a shared universe. Welcome, Paul, to the show.
Thanks very much, Josh and Scott.
Good to meet you, Paul.
So, Paul, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing?
Well, I'm pretty well new to writing. I've only been writing for 2 years now. I spent most of my life in the army, 22 years in it, in fact. I then spent another 8 years in the police force.
You're writing in military sci-fi, and you have an extensive career in the military, it sounds like. Does that help your writing?
Most definitely, I find it does. I find it easier to relate to combat scenes than what you read on a normal author writing who's never been there and never seen it.
Yeah, excellent. Gives us some authenticity.
The Safe series actually started out as an experiment to see whether I could write a book. I wrote one book and self-published it and thought, well, let's see if anybody actually likes it. Next thing I know, people liked it, people bought it, and they demanded more. I ended up writing another 2 books with the third one or fourth on the way.
And that will wrap up the series?
The plan is for that to finish off that section of the series, yeah, and maybe revisit it a year or 2 years down the line.
What's the basic premise or maybe like key character in that series?
So the Safe series was based on an idea that an alien race had spread itself throughout the galaxy, implanting the DNA in life forms on different planets. We find this by accident and decide to go out and find the Safe, the DNA seeders. It all goes wrong from there.
Oh, yeah.
It always goes wrong.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be interesting if it didn't.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, you contributed Through Glassy Eyes to the Through the Wormhole anthology. Can you tell us a little bit about your short story?
When I first got the premise for the Through the Wormhole from Nathan, it seemed to me that they were missing a little bit of a trick where I knew that everybody would try and explore through the wormhole, but forgot about what's actually happening back on Earth. The revelation there's a wormhole out there.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be now. And my story comes second in the book, following the first exploration through that wormhole. And not to cut anybody off at the ankles at all. It all goes wrong for the first story, and we forget about the wormhole. We go back to normal life, and my book then is based on what we do post wormhole, how science still advances from there.
So yours is set pretty much at the beginning of the timeline for the series.
Yeah, it would be, yes. The main about the story is that we look at what a mobile phone effectively can do, a cell phone, how it could change with the internet and access to the internet and access to information. So instead of actually having to have something physically in your hand, it gets implanted in the brain.
Okay. Oh, very cool.
That would probably make it a lot easier to play Pokemon Go, because that's a big thing over here. I don't know if you guys have it where you're at. I got ran over one last night.
Just remember, right? This is the bit you're going to cut out.
Oh, I'm leaving that in there. The Pokemon staying.
Like Scott said something. We have a whole separate part of the show that Scott says something dumb. And
Can saw that on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to go viral.
It's much
anytime.
funner in the live show because he says it, and I'm like, yes, it's live. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. So we're talking about your show and the idea that they, or your short story through glassy eyes and the effects of technology back on Earth references Wormhole.
Yeah. I kind of bring in the idea of eco-terrorism during the short story. There's an awful lot compacted into the short story. You know,
Oh, I bet.
And how effectively somebody could manipulate you if you did have something like this in your brain, and you could be manipulated by somebody off-site. So rather than you being able to operate, say, machinery hundreds of miles away, what happens if somebody hacks that?
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your process through writing? You have a novel kind of way that you write, and then is this the first short story that you've written? And was this the first idea for the short story?
I have written one short story before. Coming from a military background, I had looked at doing a military short series just to see if I could actually do it. But that has fallen by the wayside, and I've found the science fiction genre more appealing.
Yeah.
So Through Glassy Eyes is actually the very first science fiction short story I've written.
Very cool. Did you? Was the process different writing short than writing novels?
I would say I probably found it harder because in a novel I can waffle. You know, take a storyline and run with it and see where it goes. But in a short story, I've only got 5, 7, or 10,000 words, so I have to get a whole story in.
Absolutely.
You know, and I find that quite hard because I did want to carry on telling the story.
Got a lot to say. Are you a discovery writer, or do you plan things out? I guess some people call it like strength. I see these boards in your background, and I'm guessing maybe you might be more organized than I am. I'm not sure.
Well, the boards behind me, believe it or not, are actually novels and short stories, which I'm planning.
Oh, excellent.
I have a computer system that my wife found for me, of all things. I think it was to shut me up. Called Scrivener. I don't know if you guys know.
Yeah. We are both swell. I am a Scrivener genius. Scott is a Scrivener user, and
I use Scott. I kind of have. I'm like Scrivener. If you could have Scrivener-induced ADHD, because I'm running all over the place. I'm finally kind of getting a grasp on it. But yeah, so there's another great comedy series could come out of my Scrivener exploits. So, and Josh is just shaking his head like, "Why are you doing it that way?" Anyway, so you like Scrivener, and you're planning novels and short stories on Scrivener?
Yeah. What I found handy with Scrivener, and it's probably from my military and police background, is that I can lie and plot out in front of me. So I see all the other little cards on corkboard.
Right.
I put a title on each card. That reminds me what that bit of the story is going to be about. And then I write that little section of the story so I can actually have an overview of the whole thing in front of me on corkboard. That's how I write it.
Does that help you with writing and revision when you have that kind of organized overview? You're going back and making sure the story went where you wanted it to go and things like that?
Yeah, I use it in conjunction with a system called Timeline. Where I actually plot out events in the story as I go along, so that I'm not saying that this has happened before this has happened, or so I'm not missing key parts of the story.
That's pretty cool. Is Timeline a software program or something? Where would I find that so I look into it? Okay, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, it's actually called Timeline. It's one word. Especially say in the Safe series, because the Safe series is opened out over decades, effectively, and galaxy-wide, it allows you to just cast an eye over an event that happened here, say on this date, and an event that I want to happen here, say 6 months later. so that when actually writing the story, I could refer back to the timeline and go, yeah, the distance from there to there, 6 months and X amount of light years, and it was on X planet. So I don't get confused. It's very easy.
Well, I think in speculative fiction, keeping things straight's, a challenge, because a lot of times you're building a world, or at least a set of worlds that apply to the world, and to keep those timelines straight, that would be a very useful tool. I might have to look that up.
Yeah, I find it very handy just to fling it up on the second screen.
Right. And Josh, you use Scalpel?
I have used Scalpel, which is an add-on from. It's not an add-on; it's a separate program from the same guys that do Scrivener, but it's not so much a timeline program as it is kind of a brainstorming program where you can just throw out a whole bunch of ideas, connect them, and kind of. It's kind of like when I brainstorm on a piece of paper, you write something, and you circle it, and you draw another line to another circle, and you write an idea, and then you just kind of go over the paper. That's what Scalpel is.
Yeah, the spiderweb idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The shared universe that Nathan has created, the timeline he gave us starts from kind of modern day and goes through 500-600 years into the future. There are some of the authors that we've talked to have gone way far in the future. Some of them are present day. It sounds like you are going to be more of a present day contemporary type setting. Was it easier then writing in this universe because it's contemporary, because it's present day, than going far in the future and following along on the timeline that he established? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think the difficulty with flinging it far out down the line is that you don't know what the other authors have done. So you could be talking about an event or a piece of technology which they have never invented, and that then leads to flaws. So you'd actually have to have looked at what everybody else has done before you do your bit, if that makes sense to you.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So if Josh was to write something based now, Scott wrote something 10 years down the line, I write something 20 years down the line, I have to make sure that any basis for mine matches up to Scott's and Josh's.
Right.
Makes sense?
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
How I would think I would handle it, I would just write all my characters have this mantra that they kind of repeat in their culture, and it'd be something like, Josh is always wrong, none of this stuff, but he does. Just forget about everything that guy said. And then I'll just move on.
Oh, man. And I thought for sure he was going to have this, like, earth-shattering revelation that he was going to bring to the show. And
I really think you should know better than that by now.
Oh, gosh, that's funny.
In seriousness on fiction, sometimes you got to just set the rules and stuff. But yeah, I'm writing my first anthology, and I'm having the same types of things. Is how do I make sure my story fits reasonably well with the events in the other stories and the timelines? And I understand, you have some freedoms there, but that is tougher. I think you're exactly right about that.
If you're going to write in a shared universe, definitely you have to have some kind of a baseline. Even if you diverge from the baseline at some point, having that baseline is absolutely necessary. And for those of you watching or listening, depending on when this interview comes out in the month of September, there is a follow-up anthology to Explorations Through the Wormhole, and that is Explorations First Contact. And several of the authors in that anthology have already contacted other authors to kind of collaborate more, to like line up characters and line up plot points or technology points, so that the stories in that universe are more cohesive. And I think it's very cool to watch the authors work and see how they're combining their talents to make the shared universe a very cool and very real place. All right, Paul, so tell us where readers can find out more about you and your work.
You can find me on the website, www.ppcorcoran.com. That will list all the published books. That will list links to the anthologies from Nathan and Compton. There's one coming up there. Also the work I've done with Chris Nuttall in the Empire of War series. You can also find me on Facebook under Paul Corcoran, and on Twitter as well.
Awesome.
If you
Excellent.
All right. Well, this has been Explorations Through the Wormhole. For Scott Moon, I'm Josh Hayes, and we've been behind the story of Through Glassy Eyes with Paul Corcoran. The Through the Wormhole anthology will be available September of 2016, published by Woodbridge Press. And if you found his short story interesting, please pick that anthology up and give it a read, and then leave us a review or star rating, or both, on Amazon or wherever you picked up the book. So thanks, Paul, for coming on the show, and have a good afternoon, everyone.
Good to meet you, Paul. Thanks for coming by.
always